Riley Parker had exactly 30 seconds before getting fired from her third job in 6 months. The problem wasn't her skills as a graphic designer. She was absolutely brilliant at that. The problem was her unfortunate habit of speaking her mind at precisely the wrong moment to precisely the wrong person. Like right now. Honestly, Margaret, you're too incompetent to even qualify as a proper dictator, Riley muttered, while transferring her final files to a flash drive. A real dictator would at least get things accomplished efficiently. Unfortunately, she hadn't noticed that Margaret, her supervisor, was standing directly behind her. "Riley Parker!" The screech echoed through the entire 45th floor of Phoenix Industries. 30 heads swiveled simultaneously, creating a corporate symphony of secondhand embarrassment. Riley's stomach dropped as she slowly turned around, coming face to face with what could only be described as a fire-breathing dragon wearing a power suit. Margaret's face had turned an impressive shade of crimson. Her manicured fingers were clenched into fists, and there was a vein throbbing in her temple that Riley had never noticed before. It was oddly hypnotic in a terrifying way. "You have exactly 30 seconds to collect your belongings and vacate my floor before I summon security." Riley's eyes darted around frantically. Her gaze landed on a door she'd always been curious about, an elegant mahogany door with a gleaming brass plate that read, "Executive Suite, private access only." Nobody had ever discovered who used that executive washroom. It was the office equivalent of a mysterious legend. 25 seconds, Parker." Without a second thought, Riley grabbed her messenger bag and bolted. Not toward the elevators, not toward the emergency stairs, straight for the forbidden door. "Please don't let this backfire," she whispered as she grasped the brass handle. Miraculously, it turned. Riley darted inside and pressed the door shut just as she heard Margaret's clicking heels approaching down the corridor. She leaned against the door, breathing heavily, and finally took in her surroundings. Well, this is absolutely gorgeous. This wasn't just a washroom. This was a luxury spa masquerading as a bathroom. Pristine marble covered every surface, featuring a soaking tub that resembled a personal hot spring, a rainfall shower with multiple jets, and a mirror that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Her rent that was already 2 weeks overdue. Riley was so mesmerized that it took several moments to register the sound of cascading water. Someone was currently showering. Complete and utter panic mode activated. She attempted to escape, but voices drifted through the door. "Absolutely certain you witnessed her enter this area?" That was definitely Margaret's voice. "Conducted a thorough search of the entire floor, ma'am. She must have used the stairwell." Riley was officially trapped, with a naked stranger mere feet away. The water ceased flowing. "Not good, not good, not good," she whispered frantically, scanning for any possible hiding spot. There was a compact linen cabinet that obviously stored towels and supplies. Riley squeezed herself inside just as she heard wet footsteps on the marble flooring. Through the narrow gap in the cabinet door, she glimpsed a pair of impeccably shaped masculine feet moving across the suite. Feet that unmistakably belonged to someone who had never experienced public transportation in his entire privileged existence. "Alexa, contact Davidson and verify the 3 o'clock lunch meeting." The voice was rich, commanding, with a subtle Manhattan accent that sent unexpected shivers down Riley's spine. And strangely familiar. Disturbingly familiar. "Call initiated, Mr. Sterling." "Sterling?" Riley nearly gasped aloud. Ethan Sterling was the CEO of Phoenix Industries. The enigmatic billionaire who remained practically invisible to his own employees. The man featured on business magazine covers as America's most private executive. The person who, according to office gossip, was so intensely reserved he conducted video meetings even when physically present in the building. And Riley was currently hiding in his personal bathroom cabinet, while he was completely unclothed. Technically, she had become a trespasser, and possibly a voyeur. And definitely some sort of criminal. "Fantastic," she breathed, instantly regretting the sound. The footsteps halted. "Alexa, cancel that request." Absolute silence. Riley held her breath as the footsteps approached her hiding spot. Her heartbeat thundered so loudly she was convinced it would give her away. She squeezed her eyes shut and mentally bargained with the universe, promising to be a better person if she could somehow escape this mortifying situation. The cabinet door swung open. Riley opened her eyes and found herself staring directly at the most stunning man she had ever encountered in her 27 years of existence. Damp charcoal hair, piercing steel blue eyes that seemed capable of reading minds, cheekbones sharp enough to be considered dangerous, and a physique that suggested he had never heard the phrase junk food. And he was wearing absolutely nothing except a pristine white towel secured around his narrow waist. They gazed at each other for approximately 3 heartbeats, which felt like 3 eternities. "Hello there," Riley managed weakly. Ethan Sterling blinked deliberately, as if processing the surreal discovery of finding a stranger concealed in his private sanctuary. "Hello," he responded with remarkable composure. "So," Riley cleared her throat nervously. "This is monumentally awkward." "Profoundly so," he agreed, and Riley detected what might have been the ghost of a smile playing at his lips. "I can provide an explanation. I sincerely hope so." "Actually, no, I really can't." "Fascinating." Riley emerged from the cabinet with the caution of someone approaching an unpredictable wild animal. "Listen, I understand this appears highly suspicious." "A mysterious woman concealed in my private executive suite? Not at all. Happens every Tuesday." "Right, fair point." Riley nervously tucked a strand of copper hair behind her ear. "But I promise I'm not some deranged stalker or corporate spy. I had exactly 30 seconds before being forcibly ejected from the premises by the Dragon Lady of corporate America, and your door happened to be unlocked, so I thought..." "Dragon Lady of corporate America?" "Margaret, my former supervisor. She possesses this distinctly homicidal energy." Ethan folded his arms across his chest, and Riley had to summon superhuman willpower to maintain eye contact. "And what prompted this urgent need to evade Margaret?" "Because I might have observed that she was too incompetent to qualify as a proper dictator." To her face. Technically behind her back, but she possessed excellent hearing. This time, Ethan definitely smiled. "And thus you find yourself here." "And thus I find myself here," Riley confirmed. "In your private bathroom, while you're in this state of undress." They continued their staring contest, and Riley experienced an unusual sensation in her midsection, like butterflies, but supersized, and significantly more energetic. "Well," Ethan said thoughtfully, "this is undoubtedly the most unconventional encounter I've experienced in recent memory." "Encounter?" Riley's eyebrows shot up. "This isn't an encounter. This is unlawful entry, potentially a federal offense." "Technically accurate." Ethan moved a step closer, and Riley caught the scent of his cologne, something sophisticated and masculine that made her knees surprisingly unsteady. "However, it's also the most intriguing interaction I've had in approximately 5 years. Have you lost your mind?" "Quite possibly." He tilted his head with genuine curiosity. "What's your name, mysterious intruder?" "Riley Parker, currently unemployed graphic designer and apparently amateur criminal." "Delighted to make your acquaintance, Riley Parker." Ethan extended his hand with perfect manners. "Ethan Sterling, occasionally infiltrated CEO." Riley stared at the offered hand, then at his face, then at the towel situation. "You expect me to shake hands with you under these circumstances?" "Why not?" "Because you're essentially naked." "True, but you've already witnessed me in this condition." Riley inhaled deeply and accepted his handshake. His skin was warm and surprisingly soft, and for a moment she completely forgot about their bizarre circumstances. "So," Ethan said, maintaining his grip on her hand, "would you consider joining me for dinner this evening? After I've properly dressed, naturally." "Excuse me," Riley yanked her hand back. "You're asking me on a date, after discovering me hiding in your bathroom cabinet?" "Precisely. That's completely irrational." "I wholeheartedly agree. I illegally entered your private space. Technically, you sought temporary refuge. I could be dangerously unstable. But you're clearly not. How could you possibly know that? Ethan's smile was genuinely warm, and Riley felt her heart execute an unexpected flip. Because genuinely unstable people don't blush when caught in compromising situations. Riley pressed her palms against her cheeks, which were indeed radiating heat. This isn't blushing. This is enhanced circulation. It's definitely blushing. Fine, it's blushing, she burst out. But that doesn't alter the fact that you're completely delusional if you believe I'm going anywhere with you after this entire situation. Why not? Because you're Ethan Sterling. You're a billionaire. You're my former employer, and I'm just me. And what exactly is wrong with being you? Riley opened and closed her mouth, completely speechless. Ethan stepped even closer. Riley Parker, you've just provided me with the most entertaining afternoon I've experienced in half a decade. So yes, I would be absolutely delighted to have dinner with you, unless you have additional billionaire bathrooms to infiltrate today. Only yours, Riley mumbled, immediately wishing she could take back those words. Excellent. Then it's settled. Nothing is settled. I never agreed. Not yet, Ethan grinned. But you will. Your confidence is absolutely staggering. Thank you. Riley shook her head in complete disbelief. You're impossible. And you're absolutely charming when you're flustered. I am not charming. Her outburst echoed throughout the marble-lined space, and they both froze momentarily. You absolutely were, Ethan said with perfect calm. Undeniably charming. Riley buried her face in her hands. What have I gotten myself into? 4 hours later, Riley stood in front of the cracked mirror in her tiny studio apartment, questioning every life decision that had led to this moment. Technically, she had said no, multiple times, with varying degrees of emphasis and dramatic hand gestures. But Ethan Sterling had simply ignored every single no, and handed her a business card with a restaurant address, asking her to meet him at 8 o'clock. As if it were the most natural thing in the world to ask out someone you'd discovered hiding in your private bathroom. This is absolute madness, she told her reflection. Complete and utter insanity. Her reflection didn't respond, but the eviction notice taped to her door and the empty refrigerator spoke louder than words. And maybe, just maybe, she was slightly curious about America's most mysterious billionaire. Just slightly. Riley arrived at the restaurant 7 minutes late, deliberately, and immediately regretted showing up. This was one of those places where a single appetizer cost more than her monthly grocery budget. The kind of establishment that had a sommelier, a maitre d', and probably a dress code she was violating spectacularly with her only decent outfit. Miss Parker? A waiter approached her the moment she entered. Mr. Sterling is expecting you. Of course he was. He'd probably reserved half the restaurant. She followed the waiter through an elegantly lit dining room to a secluded corner table. Ethan was there, devastatingly handsome in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her security deposit. He stood when he saw her approaching. You actually came, he said, seeming genuinely surprised. Against every instinct I possess, yes. Ethan smiled and pulled out her chair. I was convinced you'd change your mind. I did. Approximately 23 times during the taxi ride. Riley sat down and surveyed the intimidating surroundings. This place is overwhelming. My apologies. I thought you might enjoy it. How could you possibly know what I'd enjoy? You've known me for exactly 4 hours, and 3 of those I was crammed inside your linen cabinet. Ethan laughed, a genuine warm sound that made Riley feel those butterflies again. Valid point. So enlighten me, Riley Parker. What do you enjoy? Riley picked up the menu and nearly choked on the prices. Food that doesn't cost more than my weekly unemployment check? Former weekly salary, technically. Thanks for the reminder. Sorry, Ethan signaled the waiter. We'll have the chef's tasting menu and pair it with your wine recommendations. You just ordered for me, Riley said slowly. Yes, without asking. Correct. That's incredibly presumptuous. I agree. And arrogant. Also true. And you don't care? Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Riley, I'm 35 years old. In the past decade, I've had approximately 57 identical dinner dates with women who ordered exactly the same grilled salmon salad, sipped exactly the same Sauvignon Blanc, and discussed exactly the same predictable topics. 57? Riley raised an eyebrow. You actually count? My assistant keeps track. I review the reports. You have reports on your dates? I have reports on everything. Riley stared at him in bewilderment. That's disturbing on a level I can't even process. I know, Ethan grinned. That's why it's so refreshing to be here with someone who calls me disturbing to my face. The first course arrived, something small and artistic that Riley couldn't identify. What exactly is this? She whispered. No clue, Ethan admitted. But it's expensive, so it must be good. Riley burst out laughing despite herself. You seriously don't know what you're eating? Rarely. I'm usually thinking about other things during meals. Like what? Work. Always work. Riley tasted the mysterious first course. It was delicious, though she had no idea what it was. That's genuinely sad, she said. What is? Not paying attention to food. Food is one of life's greatest pleasures. Do you cook? When I can afford ingredients. Riley took another bite. My grandmother taught me. She used to say that any problem in the world could be solved with the right recipe. Is she still alive? No, she passed away last year. I'm sorry. Thanks. Riley smiled wistfully. She would have loved this place, even while complaining about the ridiculous prices. What was she like? Stubborn, opinionated, spoke her mind without any filter whatsoever. Riley chuckled. Basically, I inherited all her worst traits. Those aren't bad traits. Tell that to my former supervisors. How many have you had? 3, this year. Ethan nearly spit out his wine. This year, it's only September. I'm aware, Riley sighed. I have serious issues with authority and with incompetent people, which unfortunately includes most supervisors. Including me? Riley studied him thoughtfully. Jury's still out. Honest. Fatally so. The second course arrived. This time, Riley could identify it. Halibut with some kind of green foam. So, she said, cutting into the fish, why don't you ever show up at the office? I do show up. Margaret claims you're a ghost, says nobody's ever seen you in person. Margaret exaggerates. Have you been to the office once in the last 6 months? Ethan hesitated. Possibly not. Then why do you have a bathroom there if you never visit? For emergencies. What kind of emergencies require a marble soaking tub? Ethan smiled mysteriously. The important kind. You're impossible, Riley shook her head. Why do you avoid the office? I don't avoid it, I simply prefer remote work. Why? Ethan sipped his wine, clearly considering his response. Have you ever been the only interesting person in a room full of incredibly boring people? No, usually I'm the person making everyone else feel awkward. I doubt that. Seriously, I have very strong opinions about things nobody cares about. Such as the fact that pineapple on pizza should be considered a crime against humanity, or that people who don't use turn signals are clearly sociopaths, or that... You're proving my point, Ethan interrupted, smiling. What point? That you're fascinating. Riley felt her cheeks warm again. You only think that because you're used to people who agree with everything you say. Probably. Definitely. The third course appeared. Something that looked like edible art. Can I ask you something? Riley said. Of course. Why did you ask me out, seriously? Besides the fact that you apparently have a thing for trespassers. Ethan laughed. Do you want the honest answer or the polite one? Honest. Always. Because in the last 10 years, nobody has made me genuinely laugh. Riley blinked. Nobody? Nobody authentically. Polite corporate chuckles don't count. That's really depressing. I didn't think so, until this afternoon. They sat in silence for a moment while Riley processed this information. So basically, you're using me as entertainment, she said finally. Essentially. At least you're honest. You requested honesty. True. The fourth course arrived. Riley was starting to feel full but didn't want to admit it. What about you? Ethan asked. Why did you come? Because I'm unemployed and you're buying. That's the only reason? Riley chewed slowly, thinking. And because you're intriguing. Intriguing how? Like someone who has everything but seems to have nothing. You're like a human contradiction. Ethan stopped eating. Explain. You have money, power, looks that should probably be illegal, a bathroom that's nicer than most people's entire apartments. Riley gestured with her fork. But you eat alone, work obsessively, count your romantic encounters, and laugh for the first time in a decade with a stranger who broke into your property. When you put it like that, it sounds pathetic. Not pathetic, just empty. Ethan was quiet for a long time. You don't pull any punches, do you? My grandmother always said the truth hurts, but lies destroy. Wise woman. She was. The fifth course arrived, but neither of them paid much attention. Can I ask another question? Riley said. Let's see if I survive this one. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not for business, not out of obligation, not because someone expected it, just because you wanted to? Ethan remained silent for so long that Riley thought he wouldn't answer. I can't remember, he said finally. Not even a hobby, a sport, a vacation. Everything I do serves a purpose. That's terrible. It's efficient. It's soul-crushing. Ethan smiled without humor. Welcome to my world. Riley studied him for a moment, seeing something vulnerable in his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. You know what we're going to do, she said impulsively. I'm afraid to ask. We're leaving. Where are we going? Anywhere that doesn't serve food that looks like modern art. Ethan blinked. But dessert will be much better where we're going. But I already paid. Then consider it a lesson in living spontaneously. Riley stood up. Come on, trust me. Riley, I don't just leave restaurants. Sure you do. You just decided you want to. Ethan looked at her, then at his untouched plate, then back at her. You're a terrible influence. The best kind. To her amazement, Ethan stood up. Where exactly are we going? You'll see. They left the restaurant under the confused stares of the staff, Ethan leaving a generous tip to compensate for their abrupt departure. On the sidewalk, Riley hailed a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. Riley looked at Ethan, who was clearly out of his comfort zone, but trying not to show it. Brooklyn, she said. There's an ice cream truck that parks near the bridge until midnight. Ice cream truck? Ethan asked as they got in the taxi. The best dessert in the world, and it costs less than $5. $5. I know, shocking by your standards. Riley grinned. But trust me. Ethan gazed out the window as the taxi navigated through New York traffic. I don't do this, he said quietly. What? Spontaneous things, impulsive decisions. How does it feel? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Terrifying, he admitted. And exhilarating. Perfect, Riley smiled. That's exactly the right combination. The taxi stopped near Brooklyn Bridge Park. Riley paid the fare before Ethan could object. 2 soft-serve cones, she told the ice cream vendor. Chocolate and vanilla swirl. Ice cream cones, Ethan whispered. In public? It's frozen dairy, Ethan, not nuclear material. They sat on a bench overlooking the East River. Ethan looked around like he was visiting an alien planet. Relax, Riley laughed. Nobody's going to take your picture eating ice cream. How can you be certain? Because here you're just another handsome guy enjoying dessert. Another handsome guy. Don't let it go to your head. Ethan tried the ice cream and looked genuinely surprised. This is actually excellent. I told you. Riley licked her cone. Sometimes the best things are the simplest. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the city lights reflect on the water. Thank you, Ethan said suddenly. For what? For dragging me out of there. For this. He gestured around them. It's been years since I did anything just because I wanted to. And did you want to? Ethan smiled, the first genuinely relaxed smile of the evening. I did. Riley felt that strange sensation in her stomach again, like something significant had just happened, but she wasn't sure what. Ethan. Yes. You're less impossible than I thought. Thanks. That was a compliment. In that case, thank you. Riley laughed and continued eating her ice cream, not noticing that Ethan was watching her with an expression he couldn't quite identify himself. For a moment, sitting on that bench, eating soft-serve ice cream overlooking the East River, Ethan Sterling completely forgot he was a billionaire, and Riley Parker completely forgot she'd broken into his bathroom just that morning, which, in retrospect, might have been a mistake. Because at 10:30 a.m. the next day, their photo, eating ice cream on the bench, would be splashed across 3 gossip websites with the headline, "Mystery Woman Melts Billionaire's Heart. Who is Ethan Sterling's New Romance?" Riley woke up to her phone buzzing incessantly. Still half asleep, she answered without checking the caller ID. Hello? Riley Parker. Can you explain why your face is plastered all over Entertainment Tonight? Riley shot upright in bed, recognizing her best friend Brooklyn's voice. What did you say? Entertainment Tonight, Riley. You and Ethan Sterling, eating ice cream, like some kind of romantic movie scene. That's impossible. I'm literally watching the segment right now. Riley jumped out of bed and ran to her laptop, frantically opening her browser. Brooklyn, breathe. What website? All of them. TMZ, E! News, page 6. You're everywhere, Riley. Mystery Woman Melts Billionaire's Heart. Ethan Sterling's Secret Romance. Who is the designer who stole America's most eligible bachelor? Stop, Riley shouted. This cannot be happening. Oh, but it is, and there's more. There's a reporter downstairs asking your neighbors about you. Riley ran to her window and peered down at the street. Sure enough, a woman with a microphone and a cameraman were stationed outside her building. This is a nightmare. Riley, I need to know. Are you dating Ethan Sterling? No, it was one dinner. That turned into ice cream. By accident. By accident? How do you accidentally eat ice cream with a billionaire? It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Riley started pacing around her tiny apartment. I met him yesterday. Yesterday? Let me finish. I met him yesterday. We went to dinner, then we got ice cream. And apparently someone took pictures. Wait. Brooklyn paused dramatically. How did you meet Ethan Sterling? He's more private than the Federal Reserve. I accidentally ended up in his bathroom. Complete silence on the other end. Brooklyn? Riley Parker, Brooklyn said slowly. You're going to tell me everything. Right now. Every single detail. Starting with how you accidentally ended up in a billionaire's bathroom. Before Riley could respond, someone knocked on her door. 3 sharp, authoritative knocks. Someone's at my door, Riley whispered. Don't answer it. What if it's a reporter? Riley tiptoed to the peephole and looked through. Ethan Sterling stood in her hallway wearing dark sunglasses indoors and holding what appeared to be every major newspaper in New York City. Brooklyn, it's him. Who? Ethan, he's here. With newspapers. Answer the door. No, wait, don't answer the door. Actually, definitely answer the door and put me on speaker. Riley took a deep breath and opened the door. Ethan looked like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of his typical suit. Somehow, he looked even more attractive this way. We have a problem, he said without preamble. You think? Riley stepped aside to let him in. Brooklyn, you're on speaker now. Ethan Sterling. Brooklyn's voice practically vibrated through the phone. This is Brooklyn, Riley's best friend, and I have questions. Brooklyn, Riley warned. First question. Are your intentions toward my best friend honorable? Ethan blinked, clearly not expecting an interrogation. What? She asked if your intentions are honorable. Riley translated, mortified. I haven't really had time to consider my intentions, Ethan said carefully. I've been too busy dealing with the media circus. What media circus? Riley asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Ethan spread the newspapers across her small kitchen counter, The headlines were even worse than Brooklyn had described. Sterling silver romance. Billionaire's mystery woman revealed. From rags to riches, the Cinderella story of Riley Parker. They know your name, Ethan said grimly. They know where you live, where you went to school, your employment history. They know about me getting fired. Riley's voice pitched higher. 3 times. This year. It's all there. Riley sank onto her tiny couch, overwhelmed. This is insane. We had ice cream, once. Apparently that's enough, Ethan said, sitting beside her. My publicist has been calling nonstop since 6 a.m. The board of directors is having an emergency meeting. And my mother... He shuddered. Your mother? Called me at 5:30 this morning, demanding to know when she could meet her future daughter-in-law. Future daughter-in-law? Brooklyn shrieked through the phone. We're not engaged, Riley protested. Try explaining that to the internet, Ethan said. Someone already created a hashtag. Riley and Ethan forever. Riley buried her face in her hands. My life is over. It gets worse, Ethan continued. Phoenix Industries stock jumped 12% this morning. Why is that worse? Because now the board thinks you're good for business. They want to meet you. I don't want to meet them. And there's going to be a press conference this afternoon. Riley's head snapped up. A what? My publicist insists we need to control the narrative before it spirals completely out of control. Control what narrative? There is no narrative. We're not even dating. Ethan was quiet for a moment. That's actually the problem. What do you mean? According to my publicist, saying we're not dating will be worse for both of us than just going along with it for a while. Riley stared at him. Going along with what exactly? Fake dating. Just until the media attention dies down. Fake dating. Brooklyn's voice exploded from the phone. Did he just suggest fake dating? Riley, this is like every romantic comedy ever made. This is not a romantic comedy, Riley shot back. This is my actual life falling apart in real time. Think about it logically, Ethan said. If we deny everything, they'll dig deeper. They'll follow you, harass your friends, analyze every aspect of your life. But if we give them what they want, a few public appearances, some carefully orchestrated photo opportunities, they'll lose interest and move on to the next story. How long are we talking about? A few weeks. Maybe a month. A month? Riley jumped up from the couch. I can't fake date you for a month. Why not? Because, Riley gestured wildly. Because you're impossible and arrogant, and you order food without asking, and you have reports on your dating life. Those are all valid points, Ethan acknowledged. But consider the alternative. As if on cue, Riley's phone started ringing, then ringing again, and again. That's probably more reporters, Ethan said. It's only going to get worse. Riley looked at her phone, which was now buzzing continuously with calls, texts, and social media notifications. This is blackmail. This is survival. I need a drink at 10 a.m. That's how messed up this situation is. I'll make coffee, Ethan offered, standing up. We can discuss the details. Details. Riley watched him move around her tiny kitchen like he owned the place. What details? The story we tell. How we met, how long we've been seeing each other, what our relationship is like. We can't tell them the truth? That you were hiding in my bathroom when we met? That would raise questions neither of us wants to answer. Riley flopped back onto the couch. So what's our cover story? Ethan handed her a mug of surprisingly good coffee. We met at a corporate event. You were doing freelance design work. We hit it off over our shared love of... What do you love? Food, travel, books. Movies that make me cry. Perfect. Shared love of Italian cuisine. We've been quietly dating for 3 weeks. We wanted to keep it private, but someone spotted us last night, and here we are. 3 weeks? Long enough to be serious. Not so long that people wonder why they haven't seen us together before? Riley sipped her coffee, thinking, what's in it for me? Besides getting the media off your back? Yes. Ethan sat down across from her. A job. What kind of job? Phoenix Industries needs a new creative director. Salary starts at $200,000 plus benefits, stock options, and a corner office. Riley nearly spit out her coffee. $200,000? Plus benefits. That's life-changing money. I know. You're bribing me. I prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial employment. Riley stared at him. Why would you do this for me? Because yesterday was the first interesting day I've had in 5 years. Because you make me laugh. And because... He paused. Because I think we could be good for each other. Good for each other how? I need someone who'll tell me the truth. You need someone who appreciates that quality instead of firing you for it. Riley was quiet for a long moment. This is crazy. Completely. It could backfire spectacularly. Probably will. We barely know each other. That's what the fake dating is for. Riley looked at the newspapers spread across her counter, then at her phone, which was still buzzing incessantly. If I say yes, and I'm not saying yes, what would be expected of me? A few public appearances, dinner dates where photographers can see us, maybe a charity gala or two. Nothing too demanding. And after a month, we have a very amicable mutual breakup. Remain friends. You keep the job, I go back to being mysteriously single, everyone wins. What if people don't believe we're really dating? Ethan smiled, and Riley felt those butterflies again. Leave that to me. I can be very convincing when necessary. I don't know. Riley, Brooklyn's voice came from the phone, which they'd both forgotten was still connected. Take the job. Take the billionaire. Take the adventure. Brooklyn. What? When is this opportunity ever going to come up again? You're unemployed, you're about to be evicted, and the hottest man in America is offering you a fake relationship and a dream job. What exactly are you debating here? Riley looked at Ethan, who was trying not to smile. She makes a compelling argument, he said. This is insane. The best adventures usually are. Riley stood up and walked to her window, looking down at the reporter who was still camped outside her building. If I do this, if I have conditions, name them. First, no surprises. Everything gets discussed beforehand. I don't like being caught off guard. Agreed. Second, I want everything in writing. The job offer, the timeline, all of it. Done. Third, when this is over, we go back to being strangers. Clean break. No awkwardness. Ethan hesitated for just a moment. If that's what you want, that's what I want. Then we have a deal. Riley turned back to face him. We have a deal. They shook hands, and Riley tried to ignore the way her skin tingled when he touched her. So, she said, when does this fake relationship officially begin? Ethan checked his watch. In about 3 hours. We have a lunch reservation at 11 Madison Park, and there will definitely be photographers there. 3 hours? Riley looked down at her pajamas. I need to get ready. Actually, Ethan smiled, you might want to pack a bag first. Why? Because after lunch we're going to my place in the Hamptons for the weekend. Nothing says serious relationship like a romantic weekend getaway. Riley stared at him. You want me to spend the weekend with you? In separate bedrooms, obviously. But yes. This fake dating thing is starting awfully fast. The media moves fast. We have to move faster. Riley looked around her tiny apartment, then at the newspapers with her face on them, then at Ethan. All right, Mr. Sterling, let's give them a show they'll never forget. That's the spirit, Miss Parker. As Ethan headed for the door, Riley called after him. Ethan. Yes? This better not end with both of us getting our hearts broken. Ethan paused with his hand on the doorknob. It won't, he said quietly. We both know this isn't real. But as the door closed behind him, Riley couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't sound entirely convinced. And neither was she. 3 hours later, Riley stood outside 11 Madison Park, wearing the only dress she owned that didn't have paint stains on it, feeling like she was about to walk into a lion's den. Her hands were shaking as she applied lip gloss for the 3rd time, and she kept checking her phone for texts from Brooklyn, who had appointed herself as Riley's unofficial relationship coach. "Remember," Brooklyn had texted, "fake it till you make it. And if all else fails, just stare into his eyes and let your natural chemistry do the work." "We don't have natural chemistry," Riley had texted back. "Honey, I heard that man's voice through the phone for 10 minutes and even I felt chemistry. You're going to be fine." Now, standing on the sidewalk in Manhattan, Riley wasn't so sure about that. A black town car pulled up to the curb, and Ethan stepped out looking like he'd just walked off the cover of GQ magazine. He was wearing a navy blue suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. And when he spotted her, his face lit up with a smile that looked surprisingly genuine. "You look stunning," he said as he approached, and Riley felt her cheeks warm. "You don't have to start the act until we're inside," she muttered. "Who says I'm acting?" Before she could respond to that loaded comment, Ethan took her hand and began leading her toward the restaurant entrance. The moment they stepped onto the sidewalk together, camera flashes started going off like strobe lights. "Mr. Sterling, Riley, over here. How long have you two been dating? Riley, what's it like dating a billionaire? Are you planning to move in together?" Ethan squeezed her hand reassuringly and leaned down to whisper in her ear, "Just smile and keep walking. Don't answer any questions." His breath against her ear sent an unexpected shiver down her spine, and Riley had to remind herself that this was all for show. The cameras couldn't capture the way her pulse quickened when he touched her, or the way his cologne made her want to lean closer instead of pulling away. They made it through the gauntlet of photographers and into the restaurant, where the maitre d' immediately whisked them to a prime table by the window. Perfect for more photos, Riley realized. "Well," Ethan said once they were seated, "that went better than expected." "Better than expected." Riley's voice was slightly higher than normal. "There were at least 20 photographers out there. Usually there are more." "More?" Riley stared at him. "This is your idea of low-key?" Ethan smiled and reached across the table to take her hand again. To anyone watching, it would look like an intimate gesture between lovers. Riley told herself that the way her heart skipped had nothing to do with the warmth of his fingers intertwined with hers. "Relax," he said softly. "The hard part is over." "The hard part? We haven't even ordered yet." "But we've given them their photo opportunity. Now we can actually enjoy lunch." A waiter appeared at their table with champagne flutes and a bottle that probably cost more than Riley's monthly rent. "Compliments of the house, Mr. Sterling, to celebrate your happiness." Riley blinked in surprise. "They just give you free champagne? When you're publicly dating for the first time in 5 years?" "Apparently, yes." The waiter poured their champagne and discreetly withdrew. Ethan raised his glass. "To the most unconventional business arrangement I've ever entered into." "Business arrangement," Riley repeated, clinking her glass against his. "Right. That's all this is." But as she sipped the champagne and watched Ethan's eyes crinkle with amusement, she had to wonder why that reminder felt more like she was trying to convince herself than him. "So," Ethan said, settling back in his chair, "tell me more about Riley Parker. If we're going to be fake dating, I should know more than the fact that you're an excellent bathroom intruder." Riley nearly choked on her champagne. "Could you not bring that up in public? No one can hear us, and technically it's how we met. It's part of our origin story." "Our origin story is that we met at a corporate event, remember?" "Right. The story we're telling everyone else." Ethan leaned forward conspiratorially. "But I want to know the real story. What makes Riley Parker tick?" Riley studied his face, trying to determine if he was genuinely curious or just making conversation for the benefit of any potential eavesdroppers. His expression seemed sincere, which somehow made this whole situation more complicated. "There's not much to tell," she said finally. "Small-town girl from upstate New York, moved to the city with big dreams and a graphic design degree. Turns out I'm better at designing than I am at keeping my mouth shut around incompetent supervisors. 3 jobs in 6 months is impressive, even by New York standards. Thank you? What happened at the first one?" Riley sighed. "I may have told my boss that his logo redesign looked like it was created by a blindfolded kindergartner, with severe fine motor skills. Ethan burst out laughing, drawing glances from other diners. You said that to his face. He asked for my honest opinion. And the second job? I suggested that my supervisor's marketing campaign would be more effective if we just set money on fire in Times Square, because at least that would be entertaining. And Phoenix Industries? You were there for that one, Margaret and the psychopath comment. Ethan shook his head, still smiling. It's a miracle you lasted as long as you did at any of those places. I know. I really am my own worst enemy. Riley took another sip of champagne. What about you? What's the real story behind America's most mysterious bachelor? That's a terrible nickname. You didn't answer the question. Ethan was quiet for a moment, swirling the champagne in his glass. Not much mystery, really. Inherited the company when my father died 10 years ago. Been working 70-hour weeks ever since. Haven't had much time for a personal life. By choice or by circumstance? Both, I suppose. It's easier to focus on work when you don't have other obligations. Easier, but lonelier. Ethan looked up at her sharply. You don't pull punches, do you? Would you prefer I did? No, he said after a pause. No, I wouldn't. Their food arrived. Some sort of artistic creation that Riley was fairly certain was fish, but couldn't be entirely sure. She was about to make a joke about it when she noticed a woman at a nearby table, not so subtly taking pictures of them with her phone. We're being photographed again, she murmured. I know, just ignore it. How do you ignore it? That woman is literally pointing her phone at us. Years of practice. Ethan cut into his fish with practiced ease. You learn to tune it out. That sounds exhausting. It is. Riley looked around the restaurant and noticed several other diners stealing glances at their table. A couple in the corner was whispering and gesturing in their direction. The waiter kept finding excuses to walk past their table. Even the sommelier was hovering nearby. Do you ever get to just be normal? She asked. Define normal. Eat a meal without people staring. Go to a grocery store. Take a walk without someone following you with a camera. Not really, not in the last 10 years. That's horrible. Ethan shrugged. It's the price of success. No, it's the price of fame. They're not the same thing. Aren't they? Riley set down her fork and looked at him seriously. Do you actually believe that? That being successful means giving up your privacy and your freedom? I've never really thought about it any other way. That's even more horrible. They ate in silence for a few minutes, Riley processing the realization that Ethan's life, for all its luxury and privilege, was in many ways more constrained than her own. At least when she was broke and unemployed, she could walk down the street without anyone caring where she was going or who she was with. Can I ask you something? Ethan said eventually. Sure. Last night, when you dragged me out of that restaurant to get ice cream, was that planned? Planned? No, it was completely spontaneous. Why? Because in 35 years, no one has ever done anything like that for me. Like what? Rescued me from my own life. Riley felt something twist in her chest at the quiet sincerity in his voice. I didn't rescue you. I just thought you looked like you needed some fun. Same thing. Before Riley could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. Then another. Then another. Popular today, Ethan observed. Riley glanced at her screen and her eyes widened. It's Brooklyn. She says we're trending on social media. Already? Hashtag Riley and Ethan is number 3 on Twitter. Someone posted the photos from outside the restaurant. Ethan pulled out his own phone and scrolled through what was apparently a flood of notifications. My publicist is very happy. The board of directors is very happy. My mother, your mother, has texted me 17 times asking when she can meet you. 17 times. She's very enthusiastic about the prospect of grandchildren. Riley choked on her champagne again. Grandchildren? Don't worry, I'll handle my mother. How exactly do you plan to handle a woman who's texted you 17 times about grandchildren? Very carefully. Riley's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. Don't answer that, Ethan said quickly. It's probably a reporter. How do you know? Because mine's been ringing non-stop since we sat down. As if to prove his point, Ethan's phone immediately started buzzing. He declined the call without looking at it. "This is what our lives are going to be like for the next month?" Riley asked. "Probably longer. The media attention doesn't just disappear overnight." "Longer?" Riley's voice pitched higher. "You said a month. A month minimum. These things have a way of taking on a life of their own." Riley stared at him. "Are you telling me I might be fake dating you indefinitely?" Would that be so terrible? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that neither of them seemed quite ready to address. Riley found herself looking into Ethan's eyes, searching for some hint of what he was really thinking, when their waiter appeared again. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling. There's a reporter outside asking if she could have just a moment of your time." "Tell her no, thank you," Ethan said without looking away from Riley. "She said she's from People magazine, something about a cover story." Now Ethan did look up. "People magazine?" "Yes, sir." She seemed very persistent. Ethan sighed and pulled out his phone. "I should call my publicist." While Ethan stepped away to make his call, Riley found herself alone at the table, acutely aware of the continued stares and whispered conversations around her. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications, and she made the mistake of opening Instagram. Her follower count had jumped from 847 to over 15,000 since that morning. Her most recent post, a photo of her morning coffee from 3 days ago, had hundreds of comments ranging from congratulatory messages to questions about her relationship with Ethan, to a few that were decidedly less friendly. "Girl, you're living the dream. How did you even meet Ethan Sterling? Gold digger much? She's not even that pretty. Lucky witch." Riley quickly closed the app, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden attention from thousands of strangers. Ethan returned to the table looking grim. "We need to go." "What's wrong?" "That wasn't just one reporter outside. It's a whole crowd now. My publicist says someone leaked that we were having lunch here, and now it's turned into a media circus." "Leaked? Who would leak that?" "Could be anyone. A staff member, another diner, someone who saw us arrive." Ethan stood up and extended his hand to her. "Are you ready to make a dramatic exit? Do we have a choice?" "Not really." Riley took his hand and stood up, immediately noticing how natural it felt to let him lead her. "What's the plan?" "We go out the back, get in the car, and head straight to the Hamptons. The sooner we get out of the city, the better." "The Hamptons? Right now?" "Right now." As they made their way through the restaurant toward the back exit, Riley caught sight of the crowd gathered outside the front windows. There had to be at least 50 people with cameras, phones, and recording equipment. "This is insane," she murmured. "This is just the beginning," Ethan replied, squeezing her hand. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Riley looked at the crowd, then at Ethan, then back at the crowd. A month ago, she'd been a nobody graphic designer who couldn't keep a job. Now she was apparently one half of America's most talked about couple. Too late to back out now, isn't it? Probably. Then let's give them a story worth telling. Ethan smiled, a real, genuine smile that made Riley's heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with their fake relationship. "I was hoping you'd say that." They slipped out the back exit and into the waiting town car, but not before Riley caught a glimpse of someone with a long-lens camera positioned across the street. Even their secret exit wasn't really secret. As the car pulled away from the restaurant, Riley settled back in the leather seats and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. This morning she'd been unemployed and anonymous. Now she was trending on Twitter and on her way to spend the weekend in the Hamptons with a man who was supposed to be her fake boyfriend, but was starting to feel like something much more complicated. "Ethan?" she said as they merged into traffic. "Yes?" "When this is all over, are we going to be okay? I mean, are we going to be able to go back to being strangers like nothing happened?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city passing by. "I don't know," he said finally. "I honestly don't know." And that, Riley realized, was exactly what she'd been afraid he'd say. The car headed toward Long Island, carrying them away from the chaos of the city and toward a weekend that would change everything between them. whether they were ready for it or not. The Hamptons house wasn't a house. It was a seaside palace. Riley pressed her face to the car window as they pulled through iron gates that probably cost more than most people's homes, driving down a tree-lined path that opened onto a sprawling estate overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The main house was a stunning combination of modern architecture and classic coastal charm, with floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the late afternoon sun, and a wraparound deck that seemed to stretch on forever. "This is where you come to relax?" Riley asked, still staring at the mansion in disbelief. "Sometimes, when I remember how to relax." Ethan stepped out of the car and came around to open her door, a gesture that was becoming surprisingly natural between them. "What do you think?" "I think I'm afraid to touch anything." "It's just a house, Riley." "No, my apartment is just a house. This is like a small country." Ethan laughed, and the sound seemed different here. Lighter somehow, less guarded than it had been in the city. "Come on, let me show you around." The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. Soaring ceilings, pristine white walls decorated with what Riley was fairly certain was original artwork, and an open concept design that made the entire space feel like it was floating above the ocean. Everything was elegant and expensive, but somehow it didn't feel cold or unwelcoming. It felt like a home, just one that happened to belong to someone with unlimited resources. "The guest room is upstairs," Ethan said, leading her up a curved staircase that was probably wider than Riley's entire bathroom. "Third door on the right. You should have everything you need, but if not, just let me know." Riley followed him down a hallway lined with more artwork and family photos. She caught glimpses of a younger Ethan at various ages, graduation photos, family vacations, formal events where he was shaking hands with people who looked important. In every photo he was smiling, but it was the same polite, practiced smile she'd seen him use with reporters and business associates. She wondered when he'd learned to hide his real feelings behind that perfectly crafted expression. The guest room was larger than Riley's entire apartment, with a king-size bed that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel, a sitting area with a fireplace, and French doors that opened onto a private balcony overlooking the ocean. "This is wow," Riley said, setting her overnight bag on a chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Is it too much? I have other rooms if you'd prefer." "No, it's perfect. It's just..." She gestured around the space. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't belong here." "You belong here," Ethan said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made Riley look at him more closely. "Do I?" "More than most people who've stayed in this room." They stood there for a moment, looking at each other across the elegant space, and Riley felt that familiar flutter in her chest. It was getting harder to ignore, especially when he looked at her like that, like she was something precious that he was afraid might disappear if he blinked. "I should let you get settled," Ethan said finally, stepping toward the door. "Dinner's at 7 if you're hungry. We can eat on the deck and watch the sunset." "That sounds nice." "Good. He paused in the doorway. "I'm glad you're here, Riley, even if the circumstances are a bit unconventional." After he left, Riley collapsed onto the impossibly comfortable bed and stared up at the ceiling, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions swirling around in her chest. This was supposed to be simple: fake dating, job opportunity, clean break when it was over. But nothing about her feelings for Ethan Sterling was turning out to be simple. Her phone buzzed with another flood of notifications. She'd learned to ignore most of them, but one text from Brooklyn caught her attention. "Girl, you're on the cover of 3 magazines at the grocery store checkout. Also, someone started a Reddit thread analyzing your outfit from lunch. Also, I may have told my mom about your fake boyfriend situation, and now she wants to know when she can meet him. Call me." Riley groaned and tossed her phone aside. She'd deal with the outside world later. Right now, she needed to figure out how to survive a weekend alone with Ethan, without doing something stupid like falling for him for real. She unpacked her small bag, hanging up the 2 dresses she'd brought, and laying out the casual clothes that suddenly seemed woefully inadequate for a weekend in the Hamptons. Everything she owned looked shabby compared to the elegant surroundings, but there wasn't much she could do about it now. A knock on her door interrupted her fashion crisis. "Come in," she called, expecting to see Ethan. Instead, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes peeked into the room. "Miss Parker? I'm Margaret, the housekeeper. Mr. Sterling asked me to see if you needed anything." "Oh no, I'm fine, thank you." Riley paused. "Actually, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Does Mr. Sterling bring people here often?" Margaret's expression softened. "You're the first guest he's brought to this house in over 3 years." "Really?" "Really. He usually comes here alone when he needs to think. Sometimes he'll stay for a week without speaking to anyone except me and the groundskeeper." Margaret stepped further into the room. "Between you and me, it's nice to see him with someone who makes him smile." "Makes him smile?" "The way he talked about you when he called to prepare the house. I haven't heard him sound that happy in years." Margaret winked. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." After Margaret left, Riley found herself staring out at the ocean, processing what the housekeeper had said. If Ethan didn't bring people here, what did that mean about her being here now? Was this part of their fake relationship performance, or something else entirely? She spent the next hour exploring the house, partly out of curiosity and partly to burn off nervous energy. The library was filled with first editions and comfortable reading chairs. The kitchen was a chef's dream with state-of-the-art appliances and a breakfast nook that overlooked the garden. The living room had a baby grand piano that looked like it was actually played, not just displayed. But it was the office that really caught her attention. Unlike the rest of the house, which felt warm and lived in, the office was all business, multiple monitors, filing cabinets, a desk that looked like mission control for a space program. This was where Ethan spent his time when he was here, she realized. Even in paradise, he was working. Impressive, isn't it? Riley spun around to find Ethan standing in the doorway, watching her with an amused expression. "Sorry, I was just exploring. I didn't mean to snoop." "You're not snooping. This is where I spend most of my time when I'm here." "Even on vacation?" "I don't really take vacations. I just work from different locations." Riley looked around the high-tech office space, then back at Ethan. "That's depressing. It's productive." "Same thing, apparently." Ethan stepped into the room, moving to straighten some papers on his desk. "Not everyone has the luxury of spontaneous ice cream runs." "It's not a luxury, Ethan. It's a necessity. When was the last time you did something just for fun? Something that had absolutely nothing to do with work or business or productivity?" "I told you yesterday I can't remember." "That's not living. That's just existing." "Existing has worked out pretty well for me so far." Riley walked over to where he was standing and gently took the papers from his hands, setting them back on the desk. "Has it, though? You told me yesterday that you hadn't laughed in 10 years. You eat alone, work constantly, and hide from the world in a beautiful house by the ocean. That doesn't sound like a successful life to me. It sounds like a very expensive prison." Ethan looked down at her and she could see something shifting in his expression. "You don't understand. Then help me understand. Why are you so afraid of actually living your life?" "I'm not afraid." "Yes, you are. You're terrified. And I think I know why. Enlighten me." Riley took a deep breath, knowing she was about to venture into dangerous territory. "You're afraid that if you stop working, stop controlling everything, stop hiding behind your money and your reputation, people might see who you really are, and you're afraid they won't like what they find." The silence that followed was so complete that Riley could hear the ocean waves crashing against the shore outside. Ethan stared at her with an expression she couldn't read, and for a moment she thought she'd gone too far. "You think you know me pretty well for someone I met yesterday," he said finally. "I know what it's like to be afraid of showing people who you really are. The difference is I get fired for it. You get praised for being mysterious and elusive. And what do you think you see when you look at me?" Riley stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "I see someone who's incredibly lonely. Someone who's forgotten how to have fun, how to be spontaneous, how to connect with other people without it being a business transaction. I see someone who's so busy being successful that he's forgotten how to be happy. And you think you can fix that? I think you can fix it yourself. You just need someone to remind you how." They stood there staring at each other, the air between them charged with something that felt much more dangerous than their fake relationship was supposed to allow. Riley could feel her heart beating faster, could see the way Ethan's gaze kept dropping to her lips before returning to her eyes. "Riley," he said softly, and her name sounded different when he said it like that. "Yes?" "This weekend. It's not really about the fake dating, is it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, there are no reporters here, no cameras, no one to perform for. We could spend the entire weekend in separate rooms and no one would know the difference." "That's true. So why did I bring you here?" Riley's breath caught. "I don't know. Why did you?" Ethan reached up and touched her face, his thumb tracing along her cheekbone. "Because yesterday, for the first time in 10 years, I remembered what it felt like to want something that wasn't related to work. And what I wanted was more time with you. Ethan, I know this is supposed to be fake. I know we agreed to keep it professional. But right now, in this moment, nothing about the way I'm feeling is fake." Riley felt like she couldn't breathe. Everything about this was wrong. They barely knew each other. Their relationship was supposed to be pretend. She was supposed to keep her distance and her heart intact. But when he looked at her like that, when he touched her like she was something precious, all her rational thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. "We can't," she whispered. "Can't what?" "You know what. This is just proximity and adrenaline and circumstance. It's not real, isn't it?" Before she could answer, before she could think of all the reasons why this was a terrible idea, Ethan leaned down and kissed her. It was nothing like the polite, performative kiss she might have expected. It was soft and desperate, and absolutely devastating. Riley felt her knees go weak, felt herself melting into him as his arms came around her waist, pulling her closer. She could taste the hint of champagne from lunch on his lips, could smell his cologne mixed with something that was purely him, could feel the way his heart was racing against her chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Riley felt like the world had shifted on its axis. "That felt pretty real to me," Ethan said quietly. Riley stepped back, trying to clear her head. "This is a mistake." "Is it?" "Yes. We have an agreement. We're supposed to be fake dating, not whatever this is. What if I don't want to fake it anymore?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Riley stared at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope mixed with fear, and felt her own resolve crumbling. "Ethan, we barely know each other. I know that you make me laugh. I know that you're not afraid to call me out when I'm being ridiculous. I know that you see through all the money and the reputation to who I really am underneath. I know that being with you makes me feel more alive than I've felt in years." He stepped closer again. "What else do I need to know? You need to know that I have terrible judgment in men. You need to know that I've never dated anyone who made more than $40,000 a year. You need to know that I have no idea how to be with someone like you. Someone like me? Rich, powerful, sophisticated. I eat cereal for dinner half the time, Ethan. I buy my clothes at Target. I've never been to Europe or owned a car that wasn't at least 10 years old, or had a savings account with more than a few $100s in it. We're from completely different worlds. So this is temporary insanity brought on by unusual circumstances. In a few weeks, when the media attention dies down and we go back to our normal lives, you'll realize that I'm just an unemployed graphic designer with a big mouth and no filter. And you'll realize that I'm just a workaholic with more money than sense and no idea how to have a normal relationship." "Exactly. Sounds perfect." Riley stared at him. "Perfect? How is any of that perfect?" "Because maybe we're exactly what each other needs. Maybe you need someone who appreciates your honesty instead of firing you for it. And maybe I need someone who sees past the money and the reputation to the person I actually am. This is crazy. The best things usually are." Riley felt herself wavering, felt the walls she'd built around her heart starting to crumble. "What are you asking me?" "I'm asking you to stop being afraid. I'm asking you to take a chance on something that might be amazing, even if it might also be temporary. I'm asking you to let this weekend be about more than just our fake relationship. And if it doesn't work out, then at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have had something real, even if it was just for a little while." Riley looked into his eyes and saw the same fear she was feeling, mixed with a hope that made her chest ache. This man who had everything was asking her to take a chance on him, to risk her heart on the possibility that what they felt for each other was worth exploring. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. We can figure it out together." Riley took a shaky breath, knowing she was about to make a decision that would change everything. Okay. Okay, let's see what happens when we stop pretending." Ethan's smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. He pulled her into his arms again, spinning her around until she was laughing despite her fears. "You won't regret this," he said, setting her back on her feet. "I'd better not, or I'll hide in your bathroom again. Promise?" Riley laughed and kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise and possibility. Outside, the sun was beginning to set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was the perfect backdrop for the beginning of something that might be perfect, or might be a complete disaster, but would definitely be real. "Come on," Ethan said, taking her hand. "Let's go watch the sunset, and this time let's not think about work or fake relationships or what might go wrong. Let's just be two people enjoying each other's company." "I can do that," Riley said, intertwining their fingers. "But I'm warning you, I'm much more fun when I'm not pretending to be someone else. I'm counting on it." As they walked out onto the deck together, hand in hand, Riley felt like she was stepping into a completely new version of her life. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and absolutely nothing like she'd planned. It was perfect. The weekend stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and promise, and for the first time in her life, Riley Parker was exactly where she was supposed to be, even if she had no idea what came next. Riley woke up to the sound of waves crashing against the shore and for a moment forgot where she was. The bed was impossibly comfortable. The room was filled with golden morning light streaming through sheer curtains, and there was a faint smell of coffee and something delicious wafting up from downstairs. Then reality hit her like a freight train. She was in the Hamptons, in Ethan Sterling's guest room, and last night she had completely thrown their fake dating arrangement out the window in favor of something terrifyingly real. She sat up in bed, running her hands through her hair and trying to process everything that had happened after their sunset dinner on the deck. They'd talked for hours. Really talked. Not the careful conversation of two people pretending to date, but the kind of deep, meandering discussion that happened when two people were genuinely trying to understand each other. Ethan had told her about growing up in the shadow of his father's expectations, about the loneliness of inheriting a company at 25 and suddenly having everyone around him treat him differently. Riley had shared stories about her grandmother's influence on her life, her struggles with authority figures, her dream of someday having her own design studio. They'd kissed again on the deck, slower and sweeter this time, with the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and possibility. When they'd finally said goodnight, Riley had felt like she was floating, her heart full of hope and terror in equal measure. Now, in the harsh light of morning, she was second-guessing everything. Her phone, which she'd been ignoring since yesterday, was buzzing insistently on the nightstand. She picked it up to find dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and notifications from social media apps she'd forgotten she'd even downloaded. The most recent text was from Brooklyn, sent at 6 a.m. "Emergency. Call me immediately. Do not go online. Do not read the news. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Call me now." Riley's stomach dropped. With shaking fingers, she opened her news app, despite Brooklyn's explicit instructions not to. The headlines hit her like a punch to the gut. "Sterling's secret shame. New girlfriend's criminal past exposed. From fired to first lady, Riley Parker's troubled employment history revealed. Gold digger or love match. Inside Riley Parker's desperate financial situation. Exclusive. Co-workers speak out about Ethan Sterling's new flame. Riley's hands were trembling as she clicked on the first article. Someone had done a deep dive into her background, her employment history, her college years, her family's financial struggles, even her grandmother's medical bills that had left Riley buried in debt. They'd interviewed her former supervisors, who had been all too happy to share unflattering stories about her attitude problems and unprofessional behavior. Margaret from Phoenix Industries had been particularly vicious, describing Riley as difficult, insubordinate, and completely unsuitable for someone of Mr. Sterling's caliber. The worst part was the photos. Someone had obtained her old social media posts from college. Pictures of her at parties, looking young and carefree and slightly intoxicated. They were innocent enough, but presented alongside the narrative of her as an opportunistic gold digger, they looked damning. Her phone rang, and this time she answered Brooklyn's call. "Please tell me you didn't read the articles," Brooklyn said without preamble. "I read them." "Sweetie, I am so sorry. This is character assassination at its worst. None of this is true." "Well, okay, the employment stuff is technically accurate, but they're spinning it to make you look terrible." "It doesn't matter if it's true or not," Riley said, her voice hollow. "Everyone's going to read this and think I'm some kind of scheming fortune hunter who tricked Ethan into dating me. No one who knows you would ever think that. But Ethan doesn't really know me, does he? We've known each other for 3 days. For all he knows, this could all be true. Riley, don't you dare start down that path. You are not responsible for some tabloid journalist's need to create drama where none exists." But Riley was already spiraling, all her insecurities from the night before rushing back with reinforcement. What had she been thinking? Of course, this was too good to be true. Of course, there would be consequences for getting involved with someone like Ethan Sterling. And of course, those consequences would involve her past being dragged through the mud for the entertainment of strangers. A soft knock on her door interrupted her downward spiral. "Riley?" Ethan's voice was gentle, concerned. "Can I come in?" "Just a minute," she called, quickly wiping her eyes and trying to compose herself. She opened the door to find Ethan holding a breakfast tray and wearing an expression that was part worry, part anger. "I saw the articles," he said, setting the tray on her bedside table and immediately pulling her into his arms. "I am so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen." Riley stiffened in his embrace. "You were afraid this would happen?" "Not this specifically, but the media can be vicious when they want to be. They tear people apart for sport." He pulled back to look at her face. "But you have to know that none of what they're saying matters to me, right? Doesn't it?" Riley stepped out of his arms, wrapping her robe more tightly around herself. "They're not wrong about the facts, Ethan. I have been fired 3 times this year. I do have terrible credit and student loans I can't pay off, and a grandmother who died owing hundreds of thousands in medical bills. I did drink too much in college and make questionable decisions and say inappropriate things to my supervisors." "So what? Everyone has a past, Riley. Everyone has made mistakes. Not everyone's mistakes get splashed across tabloid headlines when they start dating a billionaire. You're not dating a billionaire because of his money." "How do you know that?" Riley's voice was rising now, all her fears and insecurities pouring out. "How do you really know that? We've known each other for 3 days. Maybe I'm exactly what they're saying I am. Maybe this whole thing has been some subconscious scheme to land myself a rich boyfriend who can solve all my problems." "Stop it." Ethan's voice was firm. "You're letting them get in your head." "They're already in my head. They've been in my head since yesterday when you offered me a $200,000 job and asked me to fake date you. Maybe everyone's right. Maybe I am just an opportunistic gold digger who doesn't belong in your world." "Riley, no, listen to me. This is exactly what I was afraid of last night. We're from different worlds, Ethan. You live in a place where your breakfast tray probably costs more than most people's monthly grocery budget, and I live in a place where I have to choose between buying food and paying rent. That's not romantic. It's just reality. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. Money doesn't matter. Money always matters. It's easy to say it doesn't when you have more than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. But for people like me, money is the difference between security and disaster. And now everyone thinks I'm with you because of it. Everyone who matters knows that's not true. Who exactly is everyone who matters? Your board of directors who were excited about our relationship because it was good for business? Your mother who's already planning our wedding? Your friends who... Riley paused. Actually, do you have friends? The question hung in the air, and Riley immediately regretted asking it when she saw the hurt that flashed across Ethan's face. That's not fair, he said quietly. You're right. I'm sorry. That was cruel. Riley sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. But that's exactly my point. I don't know how to do this, Ethan. I don't know how to be with someone who lives in the public eye. I don't know how to handle having my entire life dissected by strangers. And I really don't know how to tell the difference between what's real and what's just proximity and circumstance and really good chemistry. Ethan sat down beside her, careful not to touch her. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should stick to the original plan. Fake date for a few more weeks. Let me do the job for a respectable amount of time, then have our amicable breakup and go back to our separate lives. Is that what you want? Riley looked at him, really looked at him. His hair was still messy from sleep. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans instead of one of his perfectly tailored suits, and he looked more human and approachable than she'd ever seen him. It would be so easy to fall completely in love with him, she realized. Too easy. I think it's what's best for both of us, she said, not answering his question directly. That's not what I asked. Riley stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is reality. And the reality is that this media attention is only going to get worse. They're going to keep digging into my past, keep finding new ways to make me look bad, keep questioning my motives for being with you. Eventually, they're going to find something that makes you question my motives too. That's not going to happen. Isn't it? What happens when they find out how we really met? How are you going to explain that I was literally hiding in your bathroom when we first encountered each other? How does that look for your reputation? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. We'll figure it out. Will we? Or will you decide that I'm more trouble than I'm worth? Riley turned to face him. Because that's what's going to happen, Ethan. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually. And I'd rather end this now, while we can still be civilized about it, than wait for it to implode spectacularly. You're giving up. I'm being realistic. You're running away. Riley felt her temper flare. I am not running away. I'm trying to protect both of us from a situation that's only going to get more complicated and more painful. More painful than ending it now? Yes. I don't believe that. Well, believe it. Because this is me making the smart choice for once in my life. Ethan stood up and walked over to where she was standing by the window. The smart choice would be fighting for something that makes you happy. This doesn't make me happy, Ethan. This makes me terrified and anxious and completely out of my depth. I make you terrified? Riley looked into his eyes and felt her resolve wavering. You make me want things I can't have. Like what? Like a life where I don't have to worry about money or job security, or whether I'm good enough to be with someone like you. Like a relationship where I can just be myself without constantly worrying about how it's going to be perceived by the rest of the world. Like... She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Like what? Like forever, she whispered. The admission hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Ethan reached out and cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Riley, what if I told you that you could have all of those things? I'd say you're being naive. What if I told you that I want forever too? Riley's breath caught. You don't even know me. I know that you make me laugh. I know that you challenge me in ways no one else ever has. I know that you see past all the money and status to who I really am underneath. I know that being with you makes me want to be a better person. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. And I know that the thought of losing you before we've even really begun is making me panic in ways I didn't know were possible. Ethan, I love you. The words hit Riley like a physical blow. She stepped back out of his reach, shaking her head. No, you don't. You can't. It's been 3 days. I've known since yesterday afternoon, when you dragged me away from that restaurant and made me remember what it felt like to do something spontaneous. I've known since last night, when you called me out on my workaholic tendencies and made me realize how empty my life had become. I've known since this morning when my first thought after reading those horrible articles was that I needed to protect you from any more of this. You're confused. This is just intensity and unusual circumstances and I love you, Ethan interrupted. I love your honesty, even when it's inconvenient. I love your passion for things you believe in. I love the way you eat ice cream, and the way you challenge me, and the way you make me want to be spontaneous. I love that you've been fired 3 times for speaking your mind, because it means you have integrity. I love that you took care of your grandmother, even when it meant going into debt, because it means you're loyal. I love every single thing about you that those articles are trying to twist into something ugly. Riley felt tears streaming down her face. This is too much, too fast. Maybe, but it's also real, and I think you feel it too. She did feel it. That was the problem. She was falling in love with him too, and it terrified her more than any tabloid article ever could. What happens when you change your mind? She asked. I'm not going to change my mind. What happens when the novelty wears off and you realize that I'm just an ordinary person with ordinary problems and nothing particularly special to offer? That's not going to happen. What happens when your board of directors decides I'm bad for business? When your mother decides I'm not suitable? When the media attention becomes too much and starts affecting your company? Ethan was quiet for a moment, and Riley felt her heart sink. He was realizing she was right. He was starting to see all the complications and obstacles that made this relationship impossible. You know what happens? He said finally. What? We deal with it. Together. Like people who love each other do. Riley stared at him. Just like that. Just like that. You'd be willing to deal with negative publicity and board disapproval and family drama and media scrutiny, all for someone you've known for 3 days? Yes. Why? Ethan smiled, and it was the most genuine, unguarded expression she'd ever seen from him. Because 3 days with you has been better than the last 10 years without you. Because you make me want to be the kind of person who fights for what he wants instead of just accepting what's easy. Because I'd rather have a complicated, messy, beautiful life with you than a simple, empty, lonely life without you. Riley felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. This is crazy. The best things usually are. We could fail spectacularly. We could succeed beyond our wildest dreams. The media will never leave us alone. Then we'll give them a love story so genuine and beautiful that they'll have to write nice things about us eventually. Despite herself, Riley laughed. You really think it could work? I think we'll never know unless we try, and I think we'd both regret it forever if we didn't. Riley looked into his eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. Love and fear and hope all tangled up together. This man was offering her everything she'd never dared to dream of, and all she had to do was be brave enough to take it. I love you too, she whispered. Ethan's face lit up like sunrise. Really? Really, and it scares me to death. Good. If it didn't scare you, it wouldn't be worth it. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and this time there was no hesitation, no careful consideration of consequences, just pure joy and relief and love. Riley melted into him, finally letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. So, what happens now? Riley asked. Now we face the world together. We ignore the tabloids. We prove the skeptics wrong, and we build something real and lasting and beautiful. And if it gets too hard, Then we remember that nothing worth having is ever easy, and we keep fighting. Riley smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. I can do that. Good. Because I have some ideas about how to handle the current media situation. Such as? Such as a press conference where we tell our story, our real story, on our own terms. Such as a charity gala next week where we can show everyone that we're serious about this relationship. Such as a very public, very romantic gesture that will make it impossible for anyone to question whether what we have is real. What kind of romantic gesture? Ethan grinned. You'll see. Before Riley could ask for more details, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and groaned. It's your publicist. Answer it. It's time to take control of this narrative. Riley took a deep breath and answered the call. Hello, this is Riley. Miss Parker, this is Amanda Chen, Mr. Sterling's publicist. I need to speak with both of you immediately. We have a situation. We're aware of the articles. It's not just the articles. Someone leaked security footage. Riley's blood ran cold. What security footage? From Phoenix Industries. From the day you met Mr. Sterling. The footage shows you running into his private bathroom. Riley felt the world tilt on its axis. She looked at Ethan, who had gone very still beside her. How bad is it? She asked. It's not ideal, but it's also not insurmountable. We just need to get ahead of it with the right spin. What kind of spin makes hiding in someone's bathroom look good? The kind where you were seeking refuge from workplace harassment, and Mr. Sterling was your knight in shining armor who rescued you from a hostile work environment. Riley blinked. That's actually not entirely inaccurate. Exactly. We're going to turn this into a story about how Mr. Sterling saw someone in distress and came to her aid, and how that act of kindness blossomed into genuine love. It's romantic. It makes you both look good. And it explains the unusual circumstances of your meeting. Will people buy it? People want to believe in fairy tales, Miss Parker. We're just going to give them one. Riley looked at Ethan, who was nodding encouragingly. Okay, she said, what do we need to do? Be at my office by noon. We're holding a press conference at 3, and by tonight everyone's going to be talking about America's most romantic love story instead of unfounded accusations about gold digging. After Riley hung up, she and Ethan sat in silence for a moment, processing everything that had just happened. Are you sure about this? Riley asked. Once we do that press conference, there's no going back to fake dating. It'll be real, and it'll be public, and everyone will be watching to see if we make it. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Even though we've only known each other for 3 days? Especially because we've only known each other for 3 days, and I already can't imagine my life without you. Riley smiled and kissed him again, soft and sweet and full of promise. Then let's go give them a love story worth believing in. Epilogue. 6 months later, Riley stood in the corner office of Sterling Design Studio, her own company, funded by a business loan that Ethan had helped her secure, but that was entirely in her name, and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. The view was spectacular. The office was everything she'd dreamed of, and the stack of client contracts on her desk proved that her business was thriving. More importantly, the framed newspaper clipping on her wall proved that sometimes fairy tales do come true. The headline read, Sterling Silver Love Story. 6 months later, America's favorite couple is still going strong. The article had been written after their engagement announcement the week before. Ethan had proposed on the beach in the Hamptons, in the exact spot where they'd had their first real conversation about taking a chance on each other. It had been private and romantic and absolutely perfect, and Riley had said yes before he'd even finished asking the question. Admiring your empire? Ethan asked from the doorway, and Riley turned to see him holding 2 coffee cups and wearing the kind of smile that still made her knees weak. Admiring the view, she said, accepting the coffee and settling into his arms. It is pretty spectacular. I wasn't talking about the skyline. Ethan laughed and kissed the top of her head. Smooth talker. I learned from the best. They stood there for a moment, looking out at the city where they'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, and Riley marveled at how much her life had changed in just 6 months. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked, as if reading her thoughts. Riley thought about the question seriously. The media attention had been intense, but it had died down once people realized their relationship was genuine and lasting. The board of directors had been skeptical at first, but Riley had won them over by designing a rebranding campaign for Phoenix Industries that had increased their stock value by 30%. Ethan's mother had been delighted from the beginning and was already planning their wedding with military precision. Most importantly, they'd learned how to balance their very different worlds, how to support each other's dreams, and how to build something real and lasting together. "No regrets," Riley said firmly. "Well, maybe one small one." "What's that?" "I should have hidden in your bathroom much sooner." Ethan threw back his head and laughed, the sound rich and joyful and completely unguarded. It was the sound of someone who had learned how to be happy, and Riley felt a surge of pride at having played a part in that transformation. "I love you, Riley Parker," he said, spinning her around until she was laughing too. "I love you too, Ethan Sterling. Even if you are completely impossible. The best kind of impossible? The very best kind." As Ethan kissed her in her corner office, with the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond the windows, Riley couldn't help but think that sometimes the most chaotic beginnings led to the most beautiful endings. And sometimes, 30 seconds of panic could change your entire life. The end.